$40, it's I gotta go.
Call the meeting to order. Is there an invocation at this time?
Gracious God, source of all truth and wisdom, watch over our community, that truth may prevail over distortion, wisdom triumph over recklessness, and the concerns of every person be heard. Help us to turn our backs on self-interest and to support policies that sustain the poor and the vulnerable. Give us a passion for peace and inspire us to work for unity and cooperation in our city and throughout the world. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any changes to the agenda? No? Okay.
Too late.
We are removing the recognition of Stacy Smith from her, or removing the recognition of Stacy Smith from our master municipal clerk. The lady who's the speaker tonight, Marissa Herman, can't be here tonight.
Okay.
So be sure to tell Stacy congratulations.
I didn't know if it was purposeful to maybe we just keep, you won't have to get up there and
Starting to just real embarrassed.
They took it back.
No more. Nothing on Facebook.
why wait?
Okay.
Recognition, take
Do I
it
have
away.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and the changes?
I move to approve the amended agenda.
Have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Christie and a second by Chuck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, proclamations, recognitions, presentations, etc. Broadway Plaza 2018 year in review, Jessica Brunken. How are you?
Good, you?
Fine.
This is all for me. So I don't know if you guys have a copy of this, but this is just the expenditure report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so first I wanted to go over the revenue. We did have an increase of 44%, and that was largely due to the grant funding that we received. Our revenue consists of the concession stand, rentals, tech usage, licensing, and then of course the grants that we got. The events that we had for 2018 was 126 events. From the beginning, September 2016 to December 2018, we've had 308 events total. The estimated attendance for 2018 was 9,256, which brings the grand total of a little over 26,000 people. And that is just for the scheduled events. That's not including, you know, the random birthday parties that don't actually fill out a reservation form. 58% of our events take place, well, for 2018, took place from May to August. That, you know, obviously is the busiest time for us because it's nice out. And our movie and concert series saw an increase of 208 people in attendance from 2017. The increase for the movie portion was 66, and then the concert portion was 142. I also want to just give a little preview for 2019 for this year. We do have a fund with the Community Foundation, and Match Madness this year is on March 12th. If you donate to that fund, we will be providing cookies. The year prior we did brownies, so I mean, win-win. And then we will also be going to the strategic doing meeting tomorrow. That's at 6:30 at the Mother House. We have a group, Shade Crusade. We're wanting shade for the plaza. We're wanting shade for the sports complex and also the pool. So there's a lot of different organizations that are in this project. It's kind of, right now we're thinking of shade on the sidewalk that's leading up to the concession stand, so east and west. We've talked a lot about it, but there's a lot more that we need to talk about. And then some new events that we have scheduled for 2019. Starting in April, we will be doing what we call Tube Tuesdays. I'll turn on TV and show something on cable from 11 to 1, just to encourage people to go downtown afternoon, eat lunch. And then for June, the beginning of June, during the citywide garage sales, we're going to have a kids' corner yard sales to target the parents that want to have a yard sale, get rid of some stuff, but don't have either the space or they live out of town. And we are going to just limit it to kids' items because it sells good and we don't want an accumulation of junk, really. And then we have scheduled for June 21st, we have a comedy night. It's a dirt road theme, and the comedian is Bryce Stanley from Kansas City, Missouri. He will be bringing 1 to 2 other comedians with him. It'll be free. He is charging $400. It'll be BYOB, possibly getting maybe Gambinos to sell pizza out of the concession stand, possibly. And then we are bringing King Midas back. The community did vote on that, and they will be here on Fall Fest, which is September 28th, and that will also be a free event. I have received a lot of donations for this from members or businesses in the community, so we will advertise for them on the screen, but there will be some leftover funds we'll be responsible for like advertising and such. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions? Okay.
Maintenance services and repair and maintenance services like lawns and stuff like that.
Yeah, I believe Republican Valley. Is that what we have under that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Yeah, there's
irrigation
just the
system.
operating repairs
Yeah.
and maintenance, okay.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Jessica.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jessica.
Here in financial report, Amber.
I'm using the already broken iPad, so if it falls, we're so good. Okay. The updated cover sheet was in front of you when you got here. It doesn't seem like it's very fast to do the year end, but the first meeting of February, but there always seems to be a few things that trickle in at the end there. So there were minor changes that made those totals different, but they're essentially the same. The main thing to note is that the general fund ended the year $359,000 over budget for revenue and under for expenses. So therefore our carryover and our reserve was $1,006,000. So that is the largest carryover and reserve that we've had since sometime before 2008. And I only know that we've ever had $1 million one time. So we usually do like to keep it between 800,000 to this point. 850,000 probably is the ideal, and that's kind of where we've been, except last year we were down. So this is good. And I'm going to kind of walk through the reason for that. So the financials that were on the website, if you got the most updated one, the first page, just real quick, the summary, you can see that the first column versus, the beginning unencumbered cash versus the ending unencumbered cash. Basically, all the funds ended where we estimated or where we expected them to be. Nothing was down or went down more than we thought it would. You can see that in the water and sewer fund. The reason for that decrease was doing that additional block of 6th Street water line. And we could talk a little bit more through that, but the two funds I'm going to talk about are the general fund and the water fund. So did you have any questions on these other ones? That we'll talk in detail on those two because those are the most important for now. I'll go to the general fund. This adds one column that the one that you have doesn't have. Really zoom it in. For the revenue, I just wanted to point out the ones that were above what we expected. So the estimate column, I know we talked about this at the third quarter, but the estimate column is what was made as an estimate to end the year when we were doing the 2019 budget. So in July of last year, that was where we came up with these numbers. So that's why they're different than the budgeted numbers. And as far as looking at revenue, I just wanted to look at the estimates because those are going to be more, that's what we were counting on when we were looking at the reserve that was going to carry over. So the ones highlighted, which don't show up well here, but the first one is $45,000 over our estimate in sales tax. We did do very well on that this year. Don't really have like a super explanation for it, except for it's a good thing. And in franchise fees, we were $40,000 up. About $30,000 of that, though, is a payment that we got on December 31st that really normally would have been in the next year. So that one's kind of basically what we expected it to be. Special assessments, the $21,000, that is mostly the reason that's $21,000 over. I should say we got $49,000, but $40,000 of that was for sidewalk payments. That's where those were receipted in, and that wasn't budgeted. And those were receipted in, and exactly the same amount was paid out. So it was just in and out. Moving down, ambulance service was up $41,000 from our estimate, which is $26,000 higher than budget. So we did have, I went back and looked, we did have more runs than we have in the last several years. So this is higher than it's been for a while. Fines, forfeitures, and penalties. This is mostly due to court fines. $20,000 over where we estimated it to be in July, but $33,000 over budget. It was under budgeted, obviously, but the court fines have been down in the last several years, so we did see an increase in those, but also we sent them to collections more this year, so we saw a lot more in collections.
Well, we got a different collection agency?
Yeah,
which
because in the
appears to
past
be-
they weren't really collecting for
Yeah.
court, so
Yeah.
we definitely saw better there. So in total, $275,000 more in revenue than at the time that we did the estimates, and $359,000 more than budget. So then going into our expenses, as far as each department head is in charge of their budget, and it's their job to stay within their budget. If any, let's see, we'll look at certain ones, I guess. In special projects, that is the one for the city as a whole, basically. So a lot of things that affect everyone falls in here. The $41,000 under budget and contractual services. That's just kind of like there's extra space in there if we come up with more projects during the year that we didn't end up needing in 2018. The $57,000 over budget in capital outlay, that is where we put the sidewalks. So the about 40-some thousand of that was what that was related to, which you also saw the revenue coming in. So that is okay. The $409,000 is if you remember when we made the budget, that is the amount that we put in at the bottom that we absolutely would know that we had as a reserve at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So that should not be touched. The next one that was big, again, I just picked one over $20,000 to discuss, but $54,000 we were under in our law enforcement personnel budget. That was basically due to vacancies. And this kind of thing, seeing that is what helps. I mean, we don't want to have vacancies, but when we do, that's what really helps with the reserve and to carry it over, because every year we're going to have some vacancies. Ambulance, the next one, 23,328 over budget. That mostly being in the operating. So in this case, we did see transfers to equipment reserve are not included in this. So if anybody does happen to go over their budget, then we lower the transfers to equipment reserve for their department by the amount in which their department went over. So that's where we took the difference from there. And since this department, this is not 20,000 obviously, but since the department in a whole went over budget, I just thought I would explain why. That was due to personnel expense in the animal control department, which is only from health insurance, which at the time we budgeted was a different option chosen than what the person actually took. So that's an okay reason to go over budget.
Okay.
In the airport department, the $32,000 that was over in commodities, that was from
Fuel.
the airport fuel and taking that over. So there was revenue from it also, which did not cover the full expense because we have to have the amount that just sits in the tank out there. So that was the reason for the difference, but also the reason that was so high this year. And the last one that I wanted to highlight was the pool, and that's $50,000 over budget, and that was expected because we did not budget to do the slide, but we had the revenue from the pool fee, which we also did not budget at the time to do the slide. So those cross each other out there also. So at the bottom here, 536,000 under in expenses, but I put back the 409,000 since that's not supposed to be spent. So actually $127,000 under budget in our expenses based on what we talked about above. But as far as when we did the estimates in July of last year, we basically were exactly 5,000 different than what we thought we would spend. So the real reason for the change in the reserve based on what we did at budget time is the revenue being more than estimated. That was not a very quick explanation of everything, but any questions on that?
Go back to ambulance expense. So that's for the total?
The
total was,
the total for the department was 23,000 over.
now although we had 26,000 over because the runs, that really is a catch-22 because then that's more for personnel, more for wear and tear and everything else. So it's not even a balance. We'd be better off with less money on the income, less runs, because then our expenses would be less. The way the price structure is today. Okay. That's my question.
We're not able to cover all of the costs.
Nope.
Then the other one I just quickly wanted to look at was the water fund. Basically ended the year 24,000 over in receipts, more than what we were expecting at budget time for this year. And the main reason that we overspent in what we were expecting to spend by 125,000 was the 6th Street water line, the additional one. We had budgeted to do one block and then we added the other one. So as far as when we estimated, they spent $64,000 in the water fund less than at the time we did the estimates. So that with the additional revenue, it resulted in more of a carryover and more reserve going into this year. So that is another good thing.
On the, and this is big dollars, but on the wastewater treatment facility, it runs, as far as receipts, runs, 20,000 or more per month and stuff, but on average, when you look at it. But why does December have like $700 or $750 when the other months are averaging out a lot more than that? Why is it in December that it's down?
That was booking back the accounts receivable.
No, okay.
So at year end, we had to take all the accounts receivable off, and
Okay.
when you take it all off, because it wasn't collected yet at the end of the year for
Okay.
December, but it was billed, so
Okay.
basically nothing is collected much for December.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
I appreciate your efforts with this, Amber, and I
Thank
appreciate the efforts of all of our department heads to stay within and under budget. I think as we continue to try to be good stewards of these resources, this is helpful.
And you'll get a different version, but the same thing when the auditor presents, but that's not till April or May, so.
Okay.
I'll wait with bated breath.
The audit is, I was gonna let you know, March 27th and 28th, so you will want to talk to the mayor.
Okay.
It's a good job by all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, managers, everyone. Thanks, Amber. Okay, public comments. This is a time where citizens are encouraged to speak publicly. We request that you come to the podium, state your name and address, speak respectfully, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Any public comments? Please come forward.
My name's Gary D. Giorgio. I live at 826 West 8th. Last year we had listening meetings, and I attended every one of them. I wished we would have them come back.
Okay?
The reason is this is a place we went, you look around in here, we have no public in this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We went to these, we had public. Not everybody agreed, but nobody disagreed. We had a lot of good stuff that come out of those meetings. And I know Mr. Sacco, he was to every one of them. And I think he saw there was a lot of diversified ideas. Am I right, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one other comment I'd like to make. I was on the city council in 75. That's the last time until last month I've been to a city council meeting, so it's been a hell of a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mrs. Lang and Mr. Koppel give a presentation on the turn lane up on the north side of town. I've never seen two people more prepared for a 2-year or a 3-year outlay in my life. I hope we continue to keep those people in our city employment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy and I have talked about the listening sessions, and we'll be making an announcement on those. So, action agenda. The minutes for the January 14th and 16th meetings. Do I have?
I'd like a motion, we approve them as printed.
Discussion. I have on the 16th, the minutes for the 16th, it had Keaton not in attendance, but later towards the end it said that he approved. So that's the only change that I would have. With that being changed, do I have a motion or a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Sam and a second, by Chuck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Appropriation ordinance number 2.
I have one question. Check 66408, Frank Carlson Library Employment Benefits, $120,800, $284 or $984.
Bad description, I think, but that's just their allocation that they get when we get our tax money, and then that's the amount that's been levied for them for the library and library employee benefits.
Okay, for the year.
Not for the year, but for the portion, when we get it from the county, we get it separated by each, so by the city, by TIF, library employee benefits, and that's the
But it's not just employee benefits.
No, it's the
Operating.
library and library.
I was gonna say, I wanna go one for that.
I think it has 2 lines of descriptions, but it only puts 1 in here,
Okay.
the second line.
And on check 66448, Plaza Lawn Maintenance, was that lawn work we did this year or last year?
That's the prepayment for Republican Valley for this company.
For service, yeah.
Okay, so we prepay them every year? Okay,
We save 10% on the bill.
okay, thank you.
And that's for, what, chemicals, and we do our own mowing, don't we?
Yeah, it's just for fertilizing and, oh, and the sprinklers, yeah.
Mhm.
Starting them up and closing them down, yeah. Do you have a motion to approve ordinance number 2?
I move to approve appropriation ordinance number 2.
I have a motion by Keaton. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Sam. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Resolution 2019-2081, waiver of gap.
We do this one every year, just so that we operate on the cash basis of accounting, which most cities in Kansas do, and I think everyone that our auditors audit are under these rules, which basically means that we have to have cash on hand before we can spend it.
Okay.
I move to approve resolution 2019-2081, waiver of GAP, G-A-A-P.
I have a motion by Chuck. Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a second by Christie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Passed. Ordinance 2019-3146, cereal malt beverages.
We're bringing some changes back to you again for a couple of reasons. The first is that beginning April 1st, 2019, cereal malt beverage retailers will be able to sell strong beer or beer containing not more than 6% alcohol content. And so we needed to make an amendment to this ordinance to reflect that statutory change. So we've decided to do that by way of definition, which you'll see in this ordinance. We removed some language in there that talked about how we couldn't sell alcohol to somebody in a car for consumption in their car. We feel that that's really better addressed through other statutes like driving while with an open container and things of that nature. So we're using that segment so we didn't have to renumber things to have a definition of what CMB and beer means for this purpose. Additionally, we had a retailer bring to our attention that several years ago the statute had changed to allow sales of alcohol and CMB on election day, but our statute did not reflect that, and so again we're trying to match statute with this ordinance, and so we are amending the section of ordinance to be able to allow sales of alcohol and beer on election day to match state statute. Are there any questions?
So no more drive-through liquor stores?
No, I didn't say that.
No, I meant you can't sell them inside the car. In Texas, that you could go up to a window and they'd sell it right in the car.
I believe that the language said for consumption in the vehicle.
Oh, okay.
So
You can still purchase in your vehicle, it's not for consumption in your vehicle.
I think it's Mississippi or Louisiana. You can buy daiquiris. You pull up and buy daiquiris and margaritas.
interesting.
Crazy.
Anyway,
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept ordinance 2019-3146.
I have a motion to approve by Sam. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Keaton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Passed.
Thank you.
Okay. Managers' reports.
A few short items for you. Miller Pipeline is continuing to do their work for replacement of gas service lines throughout the city. They've most recently worked in an area between 13th and 16th Streets between Republican and State. They've been caught in the weather deep freeze like many of our other projects have. So we have several open holes and alleys that we've been trying to wait for a break in weather to fill those. The break-in weather's not happening. We're starting to get some complaints from residents in those areas. So we are working with Kansas Gas to try to find a solution in the very near future to get those alleys in such a safe shape that it's safer for folks to drive down those and to be able to access their garages and the rears of their houses. So just know that if you hear of anyone complaining about that, have them give us a call so that we can know specific areas that are having issues. But we are working with Kansas Gas on it to get it addressed.
Okay.
Yesterday, we had representatives from the North Central Regional Planning Commission come and visit with us about opportunities for community development block grants or CDBG funding. The city had received some grant funding several years ago for different projects, including some weatherization, some rehab, replacement of sanitary sewer lines, things of that nature. So we were talking through some different options that would, again, kind of address some goals that we'll be talking about later in our study session, both to address blight and to continue infrastructure maintenance. So we'll be exploring those options as a staff. And as we have more information for you, we'll bring that forward. But we are exploring some options to be able to make our dollars go further. Also, tomorrow evening, as Jessica had mentioned, the strategic doing session is happening at the Mother House at 6:30 p.m. in the auditorium if you're interested in going and joining a project. One of the projects we're going to go ahead and take there is some improvements to Heritage Walking Trail. This is going to be everything from the lighting. So remember, we had Levon Rousseau had donated a sum of money to us to help us finish lighting that trail for safety purposes. The project is going to cost more than the amount of money that she left us, so we've applied for grants to be able to fully fund that project. And one of the things that we're finding as we're applying for these grants, especially those through the Community Foundation or through Dan Hansen, is that they really want you to go through the strategic doing process. They want to make sure that you are managing that project well and that you've identified all the steps along the way, who's doing what, being held accountable with the time frame, making sure you're not missing a step, and it's a well thought out project. Another option we talked about this several months ago, is getting some signage out there that would also tie into travel and tourism. I visited a little bit with Shaylee George. They have a branding committee through the National Orphan Train. We are a National Orphan Train town, and they're very excited about that project, but they understand at the same time that we probably need to go after some grant funding to be able to make that project a reality. So again, we'll incorporate that into our conversation at strategic doing as well. And then I know Chris Atkins has visited with his rec advisory board about having some folks join us for that conversation as well, because again, if we want to promote community wellness and events at Heritage Walking Trail, they need to be a part of that conversation. And how do we make sure that we're getting everything that we need out there to make that a better event space? So again, we'll be having a table there for purposes of improvements at Heritage Walking Trail, because we know that it's also a step that we need to take to make sure it's well thought out and well planned, be a multi-year process. But we know that it's going to help to make our grant application look a little bit better to be able to get some grant funds to advance those projects. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for me?
No.
All right.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Staff reports?
Just wanted to let you know the city selected some dates for spring cleanup. And it's going to be April 8th through the 12th. So we want people to start setting their stuff out on April 6th and 7th, that weekend prior to that. We'll be mentioning it again prior to this, so just a heads up. Got people wanting to do something, line them out.
Now, does this include, if you got cans of paint and stuff like that?
No.
Okay.
Because that's kind of a hazardous material.
Yeah.
So, and for us
Does-
to take it, I mean, if the can was empty and dry, we
Yeah.
could pick it up.
Yeah.
But if it's got paint in it, they got a process that you've got to go through, put sand in it, get it hard before you can ever take it out there.
I know some cities, I used to live in Jefferson City, Missouri, and they'd have a dry thing every year where they, no matter what it was, chemical or whatever, they'd come pick it up and dispose of it properly, because they were just trying to avoid people doing the opposite and getting rid of their acetone and all their other stuff the wrong way. But I know that would probably be a pretty big expense for the city to do something like that.
It'd be a training thing for me to figure out where everything is supposed to go to.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
A lot of it takes a big incinerator, but yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Is there any other questions?
thank you. Thanks,
That's all.
Ron. Mayor and Commissioner comments and reports. Sam?
Nothing tonight.
Chuck?
Not necessarily. I guess I would make a quick comment. Just, I think there are times when I've been approached by different people who see sometimes the speed or how easy it can be to get through a meeting, and they kind of question, as commissioners, what we do. And I think, as Mr. Girdos said earlier, it's really because of the planning that goes into this, and the preparation that goes into the meetings to make sure that we have the information ahead of time that does make things a lot easier as we come forward to perform the business. So I think it's just always really impressed. Amber's presentation on the budget today spoke to the work that the department heads do in that regard as well. So it's just continues to be an honor to work with you all, and I appreciate the hard work and the dedication that everyone puts forth week in, week out.
Okay. I've had a few comments about the railroad crossings. Again, that's being brought up. That wasn't myself. It was other people talking to me about it. And I guess in light of what happened just the other day on Broadway, and that, if it would have happened maybe on one of the other ones, there might have been, an incident where somebody could have gotten hurt or whatever. But I know that's just going to be an ongoing thing, trying to deal with the railroads and the owners of the railroads. The owner of Kyle is GW?
Oh, I don't remember what the owner's name is. I dealt with that guy, I don't know what his title was, some kind of field manager or something.
Yeah. So we may want to revisit some of that stuff. Luckily, it didn't happen during the harvest when it was in full bore, but I've had that brought up. And also, Mr. Girdo, I've had other people come up and talk about the listening sessions, and so that's good that people are interested in that. So appreciate you bringing that up tonight, too. Keaton?
I don't have anything for tonight.
Me either.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I got
Yes,
one
sir.
thing.
Yes.
Chuck kind of reminded me of it. I mean, the staff did such a good job of holding expenses and their revenue and everything else. And I know we talked about this in the past, but I really think we need to push it so we could get in some sort of a simple chart that we could get out to the public. Because I think, especially at this time, there seems to be a lot of concern on taxes going up and control of their money and what people are doing with their money. And I think the city should just take a stand on its own and show the people that we are watching their money, and look what we're doing, and do it in a simple percentage. And I think if it ever needed to be told, it's right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to have a study session afterwards, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion from Chuck. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Keaton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Adjourn.